Roger, welcome to this late night episode of the BJJ Eastern Europe podcast. First of all, man, like after all of that hush bob with the coronavirus, are you feeling all right now? Has the coronavirus left any like repercussions in terms of recovery of the lung capacity? How are you feeling?
No, I'm back 100%. There's no long term. There's nothing of that. It was just while I had the virus. It was just I had a high fever,
Mhm.
but I'm good now. Back to my 100%.
Are you like, I'm not aware of the current state in terms of like the training capacity in London. Are you back to training like as normal, or are the lockdown measures still enforced in terms of training?
No, the academy is still closed. I'm not sure when we'll be able to open again. The government they haven't told us. So I think they saying you can maybe start training indoors, like indoors activity, just in July,
Mm.
and maybe August we will be able to go back to open the school normally. But we still have to wait and see. It's just rumors. They hasn't released anything certainty. I think they're just playing by time. Like, every week they're seeing what the effect of slowly going back to normal has in the country, and
Mhm.
if everything is fine, and hopefully July, August we should be back and running.
Have you managed to find ways to, replace jiu-jitsu with some other activities?
Yeah, I mean it's very difficult, but I've been trying to keep active. I've been working out. There's some weights here. I go to the gym. I do some weights there. I've been
Mhm.
playing a lot of tennis.
Oh, tennis.
Lately, it's been it's the only activity that we can do. We don't have to be close to each other.
Yeah. So that's
So I'm
allowed.
starting to. It's allowed. Yeah, you can do outside activity as long as you're not too close.
Yeah. Are you good, any good in tennis, or is it not on the same level as your
I
jiu-jitsu?
just started. I never. I wish I never played before. I started playing like about a month ago.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's okay. I mean, I've been having a lot of fun.
Is it difficult? Like I know, like this. I mean, of course, when you're on a professional and even some sort of like an amateur level, when guys play tennis, I mean, just looking at them sweat at, I don't know, plus 30 degrees Celsius or even more for 4 or 5 hours. Is that something that you also found to be difficult, or is it just like, sort of a recreational activity?
No, no, no. It's hard. It's very hard. Under the 12 o'clock sun,
Mm.
it's difficult. It's very technical. It's very very technical. I found. So it's fun. I mean, just it's like being a completely beginner in something else. It's fun, to learn something new,
Mhm.
and it's a fun sport. It's been having a lot of fun.
Are you approaching it with same sort of a like competitive mindset when you're playing against, I assume, your friends, as you have done in jiu-jitsu, or is it? I'm actually generally interested in this. Like, of course, every single one of us who admires you and your actual BJJ has always admired your, so to speak, like resolution to commit and to bring everything to the end, like commitment to submission, basically. Are you as committed, as aggressive actually in your training today, or is it something that you've learned to, basically um, slow down with? So basically, is your focus still the same?
No, of course not. It changed completely, energy-wise. Let's say even when I train nowadays, I mean the intensity of the sparring I have now is not the same as I was competing. It's you have to slow down. The body cannot sustain that for long. Especially, I'll be next year before. I was thinking that the other day. I know I'm 38. I'm 39 this year, but you never really think about age. And then suddenly I was like, oh my God, I'm 40. Because Braulio, my friend Braulio Spima, he was his birthday, just recently, and he just turned 40, and I was like, oh my God, next year I'm 40. And I was like, wow. But when you hit the 40, it's like, holy moly. Yeah, it's like I'm not young anymore. But I think it's you have to play with your with you have to listen to yourself. You cannot do things the way I cannot do things the way I used to do when I was like 25.
Of course.
It's impossible. So it's, as long as you adapt to your age and to your body, I can train forever if I'm smart enough. People that suddenly they have to stop at some age is because they didn't they didn't listen to their own body. They want to train exactly the same way their whole life, which is not possible. I can train forever. And the older you get, the more you have to adapt. You have to give a lot more than try to get it.
Yeah,
But it's
basically you
normal.
have to pace yourself more.
Yeah, of course. Your body just get weaker and weaker. And the intensity, as a competitor, as a high level competitor, you get the most intense type of training, to be in that sort of level. And I mean, I retire now. I cannot maintain that level for too long, especially, you get injured, it's impossible. Your body needs to be strong enough to sustain high intensity training. And I can still train hard, of course, but not like every day the way I used to. I used to train twice a day, every day. Now there's no chance. I'm happy to train every day.
Mhm.
So
So y- basically, the competitive drive was kind of replaced with the drive for longevity.
yeah, I mean it's different. It's the mindset. I hate losing. I will always hate losing, but you have to accept your reality. I cannot win forever, and it's not about winning or losing. It's, training wise, it's when you train, it's not that you just want to win, that you cannot lose. I mean, it's you made a mistake, you give up, well done, we start again.
Mhm.
It's completely normal to things not going your way always. And the older you get, the more things they not go your way.
So it's basically experience is starting to talk in your own regard, basically.
And it's not a matter of a win you're losing. It's just having fun training. I love training. I will train forever. It's win you're losing. It's just fun to train. Jiu-jitsu is such a fun sport to do,
Mhm.
and especially most people I train nowadays, they're my students. It's not about win you're losing to them. If I don't give them, they get nothing. So I don't mind. It's just for playing for have fun. But they're getting better and better, I have to say. But
Excuse me, I haven't heard you.
no, I say it's not about winning or losing. When I train, like nowadays I train with my students most of the times. It's not about winning or losing against them. It's just training for fun.
Mhm.
Training because I love to train. It's a great exercise. It keeps my mental health, I'm sharp.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, I go mad.
I don't know, man. Like, so, just like a preface for you to understand, the BJJ Eastern Europe team is kind of dispersed throughout Europe and essentially across several continents. In my regard, I'm in a small country of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the thing is, like, basically, the lockdown measures have subsided here. I don't know, for example, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we started training on the 1st of June. And there were basically no cases in our own city. And just recently, the cases started, getting higher in numbers. So basically, everybody is fired up and ready to go and, ready to compete. And everybody is like really, really ready to. The first week of training, like the previous week, has been spent, taking the time to slowly get into it, not get injured, not get burned out. And this week has really started being, really, really difficult one. And to find out that there's an increase in cases and there's a possibility of the training being restricted again, it's really frustrating. And I understand in regards to the mental health, it's just like a tennis match, like ball goes over the net and the other, and I just hope that my serve will win.
Yeah, exactly. Here, unfortunately, we are still closed. All the gyms, we cannot train, but we'll see. You will one day.
Yeah, one day, soon enough. You mentioned, of course, that you've been always training for the love of jiu-jitsu, except that this love has taken more of a, so to speak, like broader terms in regards, spreading that love, of course, as being a teacher to your own students and not just channeling it through the competitions, through winning for yourself, but you're trying to have your students win as well. I'm interested because, of course, I mean, this is something that you touched upon, that you and Professor Danaher actually touched upon on your talk. It was really, really spectacular. I really enjoyed it. Professor Danaher basically said that, you know, him and most of the other jiu-jitsu practitioners had to have a reason for falling in love, for starting actually jiu-jitsu. Whereas you, of course, you were born in a historic family, and jiu-jitsu has always been a part of your life. But I'm interested in knowing has jiu-jitsu been something that you enjoyed from the very early age, or was it something that you sort of had to grow into and, you know, begin to love only later on?
No, I always liked jujitsu, and as a child, you have a child mentality. It's a child vision of reality of your world, and I mean, I've never decided. It's jujitsu is my life. When I was a kid, as a kid, you don't think of, you don't think of what you're going to do for your life-wise, what's going to be your job, what do you want to do in life. Not when you're like 7 years old. You want to know where you want to play, what
Yeah.
video game. So what did you video game? I want to go play on a playground with my friends. And I think when, it's as soon as I was getting into my teenage years, that's when I start, that's when you start growing up. You start seeing life differently than when you were younger. You start thinking of life as an adulthood. You see the life with a different eyes. And the moment that happened to me, I kind of, I start following the path of jiu-jitsu. And I think for me, it came very naturally, there was no pressure. And no one ever told me like, yeah, you have to do that. I think it's, jiu-jitsu in my life in general, it happened in a very natural way. This pieces was just following, fixing into each other, and here we are.
What do you think has been who do you think has been the most prominent influence in terms of your beginning jiu-jitsu journey?
There's two uncles of mine. Actually, I would say the person not had the biggest impact, but he was there on the critical moment. It was my uncle Helion, because I remember, he lived in Rio when, he was born in Rio. He grew up there, but he moved to the south of Brazil when I was still a child. And I remember being 14 years old, 14 or 15. And I went to spend my school holidays with him in the south. My mom agreed. They spoke, and my mom, she asked me if I wanted to, and then I said, of course. I used to train with him when he lived in Rio. He was like, he's my very close uncle. So I went there for a few weeks. And before that, by then, I think after I was like 10 years old, I gained a little bit of weight. I was like a chubby kid. Not, like obese, but chubby. I had quite a bit of the fat belly around my stomach.
A little bit to the sides.
Yeah, the love handle.
Yeah.
But so yeah, and I was never training much. That time I wasn't training much. Training was like, I don't know, once a week, twice a week, and then not training next week. Was like very sporadically. And when I went there, my uncle Hollis was living with him. And Hollis is a few years older than me. And when I went there as a white belt, and Hollis was already a purple belt. And it was the first time that, I was like living with my uncle at his house. And, they were like talking about jiu-jitsu all, every day. My Hollis was like competing, always discussing techniques, getting back home. We used to wake up, like do a workout. And my uncle was like, you have to lose weight. You got to be healthy, man, get into a diet. And then I start dieting. Mm-hmm. So those I think it was like 4 or 5 weeks. It changed my life, because when I got back to Rio, I was already like, oh my God, I want to be a fighter. Like, this is what I want to be. So that was like a very special moment. It was like the turning point of becoming a kid, lost as a kid, not knowing what you want to do. And then suddenly it's like, it clicked. It's like, oh man, I want to be a champion too. It's like I saw Hollis, I saw him. I was like, man, this is the Gracie way.
Mm-hmm.
And I got back to Rio. I was already training every day. And then I went back, I spoke to my mom and my dad, and it's like, he was like, come live with me. You're going to train every day. And then I lived, next year I went back and I stayed with him, between he and his brother, my uncle Crawling. And, they, they were right on the beginning. So that, it changed my path. From that moment on, I was like, I'll be a champion. And then I started just training every day. My life changed.
Yeah, it basically gave you a sense of direction.
Yeah.
And you're speaking about, that clicking and that, basically the spark igniting itself in terms of you wanting to become a champion, setting that sort of a goal for yourself. Has that spark, has that motivation always been on the same level for you, as consistent as you have been consistent in winning? Or is it something that you were also had to wrestle with?
I think after that moment, it stayed with me forever. And because it stayed with me exactly the same way through my whole life so far, that's why I got where I am now. Because if you looked at my career, ever since I was, at that moment, exact that point on, it's a continuous path of improvement. I never stopped improving. If you looked all the world championship I fought, let's say as a black belt, since the first one in 2003 to the last one in 2010, every year I competed, I was a better competitor. It's, if you look at my 2 years competing as a black belt, it was the best years of all the other ones when I submitted most of my opponents. And, it's a huge evolution if you look in the way. And I think because that thought stayed with me from day one and never stopped. Like I always try to be the best fighter I could be. And it's never enough because it never is. It's a path that I will never be the perfect fighter. No one will ever be. You can always improve. And because I always try to get better, I always got better. Like every year, I want to be a better fighter. And that, because I had that mentality, I never stopped getting better.
So mentality was a really important factor in terms of that continuous progress that you're speaking of.
Mentality is what made me.
Excuse me?
My mentality is what made me. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be what I am today.
How would you then advise? So let's say, for example, that you have somebody who has been training jiu-jitsu, for example, I don't know, for a year, who has some sort of experience under his belt, no pun intended, and who decides, as in the same way as you did, that he or she wants to become a BJJ world champion in one regard or another. What would be your advice for them looking back throughout all of your experiences, throughout all of the experiences of winning and rarely losing, but losing nevertheless? What would you advise them, like in terms of maybe top 3 advice that you would give to somebody who wants to turn into a really good competitor and even perhaps a professional one?
It's commitment. Everybody wants to be a champion.
Yeah.
In a way that everyone wants to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
But who has the commitment to go after? That's what makes it different between two people. It's everybody wants the same thing, but who wants more? Who has the commitment to do what's necessary? It's not easy. It's not an easy path, to be good at something, to go beyond. It's a huge commitment. It's whoever is prepared to follow that path, he will get there. Commitment, dedication beats talent any day. It's not just for some talent. I'm talented, I'll do well. You need commitment and dedication. It's 100%.
It's 100% regards to that. But in terms of like self-doubt, how have you dealt with that? If you already in terms of not really self-doubt, but in terms of nerves, because I've seen some of my friends, actually, training partners, being really, really, really good in training, just smashing my face in every day and really being competitive with coaches as well. But when the competition day comes, it's they don't perform at their best, and most of the time it's due to their nerves, due to their anxiety. Do you have certain methods that you've used on your own behalf, or which you advise your students to utilize when it comes to stepping on that competition podium? How do you deal with nerves?
Uh, it's I never really done anything special in that aspect. I was lucky enough to have a very strong mind. It's I think depends on the level of your mentality. If you look, many other sports, you have sports therapy. That you can, there's people that you can go and talk to. It's just just the same way that people has talk about the problems. It's you can seek help in that aspect. Like sport therapy, it does help. If you look all the high level sports in other type of sports and martial arts, there's a lot of high level performers or champions that they do use sports therapy. It's it does help. I think simple things that you always help me. It's people, they get to overthink of a problem, and they create a problem in your mind. It's insecurity. It's the only reason that you're nervous is because you're a bit insecure, which is normal. It's before a big event, the adrenaline kicks in, you get nervous. But if you cannot control that in a way, that then it's people that they cannot control, they won't perform as well. It's that's why they're not winning. So you can do things to try. I've seen a lot of times people that they like amazing in the academy, but they cannot perform in tournaments. Their mind won't let them, because they get too nervous. They lock themselves. They cannot let the game flow. So they look worse than they actually are. It happens. It's normal. And sometimes that sort of things is good to to listen to a sport therapist. It can help. There's some mild cases that the people get too nervous, and then when you go compete, the muscles cramp up. You have no power to grab the gi. But that happens to everyone. It happens to me in almost every single first fights. You're not warm enough, and then your muscle, especially your forearm, by holding the gi locks. So in the middle of the fight, you lose all your power. It's normal, but then it's lack of warm up. Probably, if you warm up properly, that means you will break a sweat. Your body will get rid of all the adrenaline, and your muscles, you will relax your muscles. So people that they're more nervous, they need to do a better warm up before, and try to control the thoughts. Don't think of fighting. It's like from a few days before, let's say 2 days before. There's nothing that you can do that's going to make you better in 2 days. Nothing. It's the opposite. If whatever you overthink, you will do worse, because you will get too nervous, your body will cramp up, So now it's time to think of nothing. Go think, watch a movie, go think of watch a comedy, talk to your friends, anything but fighting. That's what you should be thinking of now. Stretch, relax, and just warm up well before your fights, because you're warming up, you relax, and you're ready.
So it's basically just finding ways to relax, and when the competition day comes, to dump all of that adrenaline rush in such a way through a warm-up or something similar.
Yeah.
Like going back, and actually not going back, but touching briefly on all of the topics that we've spoken about right now, you have a really calm demeanor, when it comes to, as far as I've seen, when it comes to coaching others, when it comes to speaking and everything like that. Is your, if we would say, like an overall BJJ philosophy like that as well? And if you had to like pick out an idea or two, how would you represent your own BJJ philosophy as? How do you see it influencing your life in general?
In many ways, because jiu-jitsu, it taught me how to deal with challenge in life. And that's probably, pretty sure there's other as important lessons from jiu-jitsu, but one of them, the most important ones, is how to deal with challenge, how to deal with stressful situations, and how do you overcome them. It's it taught me to keep a cool head, don't let the emotions take control of my actions in my mind, and try to assess the best solution possible for whatever life puts in front of me. That was the biggest I think one of the very, very important lessons I had from jiu-jitsu. So it's regardless of what situation I see myself, I try to remain with a cool head and try to think a way out. I don't let emotions take control of my actions, because the moment they do, whichever your action is not going to be as clear and as good as you could be if you keep a clear mind. It's anything you do with anger, it's not the best solution. There's no doubt about it. If if you can control your emotions, for sure you'll be able to think a better way out.
Was there like some sort of a defining moment, basically like a defining moment, a moment in of itself, when you look back again, like on all of your experiences, that kind of taught you that lesson, or was it just the continuity of training? So basically my question is, let's rephrase it. If you had to, when looking back, what would be perhaps the biggest lesson, encapsulated in one moment that you spent on the mats? It could be like, for example, something that you came to realize after a certain win, or maybe after you received your black belt, or maybe after you were winning your first BJJ world title at your blue belt. What has been the single most important lesson that you learned on the mats?
It's difficult to say it. I don't know what was the most single lesson. I think the way that jiu-jitsu has to teach you, the way they taught me, it repeats the same thing over and over again. It's almost like a pattern, and sometimes it takes time for you to learn, but it's because it happens so many times, you end up seeing. It's like trying to practice, trying to get better from the mount position. It's, you might not see it first, but the more time you spend in the mount, trying to attack, trying to defend, the more things are happening the same. In very soon, you might not see it first, but eventually you can see it. And I think that's what probably, it's the most important thing. So it's not just one moment. It's very difficult for, at the first time you see the solution straight away on your head. It's very difficult. It happens over and over again. Jiu-jitsu, you always back to the same position. If you train for years, you're back to that same moment. So at one point you will learn. I think that's probably one of the things that jiu-jitsu taught me. It's there. It's the repetition. It takes time for you to be a better person. You're not going to be a better person in like a day. It's with time. It's small steps, small changes. You'll become better. The same thing with jiu-jitsu. It's with small changes you become better every day. Till a few years down the line, you're a much better fighter. That's why jiu-jitsu is such a difficult sport. It takes so many years for you to be a black belt. And when you get your black belt, you're still in the beginning, your career. People, they think, oh, I've been training for 10 years, I got my black belt. I mean, it's still a beginning. It doesn't mean you're a master. You're still going to get smashed by same people you get smashed before. There's no change. Black belt won't give you superpowers out of a suddenly.
Yeah, it's not just like you're winning everything. How did it feel getting your black belt?
It feels good. It's an achievement. It's almost like I'm professional now. It's, like now you're in the elite. Because before, competing as a color belt, you're not competing against the best, regardless of how good your opponent is. He's not a black belt yet. So when you get your black belt, it's like, okay, now I'm fighting the elite. I'm fighting the best now, not brown belts or purple belts. Now you're like, now I'm with the elite.
You're on the top, basically. Not on the real top, but it's like the beginning of Mount Everest.
yeah, say now you can face the real challenges, you know.
Um, so in terms of those challenges and in terms of you're saying, of course, there's always room to learn something new. What has been perhaps the most difficult technique or the most difficult part of your game in terms of the competition that you struggled most with? What's perhaps the thing that you find yourself working on the most of the time?
I don't work. I mean, if I would think what I work the most, you know, in jiu-jitsu, everyone trains guard more than anything, either guard, you know, top or bottom, more than any other situation. Is inevitable, you know. Even me that I train, I try to train everything equally, but you know, guard is always the part that you spend most time. And sorry, what would
my basic question was like, which, in terms of your own game as you were developing it, you know, basically all the way perhaps from white belt up until now, or in certain periods, you know, through your BJJ
what I had
lifetime.
the most. I mean, there's some positions that regardless how good you are, you'll always struggle to get out. For example, side control bottom part. I mean, it doesn't matter how good you are, you know, how strong you are. It's a hassle to escape. You know, there's not one clear way that's like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to escape. No.
Yeah.
I can get a student who never competed before, you know, strong guy. He gets on top of me, you know, just holding. You know, if he's experienced enough, it's not going to be easy, regardless of what I try to do. I mean, it can be hard for him to get me. That can be very hard. But if I put in my mind, I will escape like right now, it does not happen. I mean, I can still be there for a while, you know. He's not going to get me, you know.
Unless you let him.
Yeah, I mean, you know, unless he's like very good. So there's some positions like half guard. Doesn't matter how much I train half guard, I will always struggle in the bottom because it's not a position that I like. I don't know how people can feel comfortable in the half guard in the bottom position, you know, getting smashed in the face. You know, you know what to do. You need to try, but it's not a comfortable position. And sometimes it's a struggle against people that they're not really that good, you know. So there's some positions in jiu-jitsu that I'll say side control, half guard in the bottom. It's I'm sure there's a few others.
A few others, but basically everything where there is no distance to basically attack immediately or actually to defend in the right manner. So again, in terms of the technique, like, okay, there's one side, I would say in my own, of course, through my own personal worldview, there's two sides to that I really admire more than anything. The first one we've already talked about, and that's, you know, as far as I see, like when you're on a world-class level, it's easy to win a lot. But what's not easy, and that's something that you've done, is to win a lot in a consistent basis. And the second thing is your, of course, and everybody talks about this, your preference towards the basics, and to always be working on those basic things, and to always be looking for, you know, the details that will make that basic thing work much more spectacularly than any fancy move will. What is this preference towards like the basics and to refining them something that you always gravitated towards, or was there like a period in your, you know, lifetime where you actually experimented a little bit more with the fancy stuff?
No, I've tried everything, you know. I think during my path as a competitor, and even now, you know, there's nothing that I did not try. You know, it's not that, you know, someone shows something that straight away you said, no, I don't like this. You know, you try. You know, you try a few times. Sometimes it does not fit on your game. You know, sometimes you end up in a very comfortable position because you're trying that move, or, you know, you're trying a move that it doesn't work every time. Sometimes you get it, but 50% of the times people escape. So it's, you know, then naturally I try another path, you know. And I think on my game, it kind of happened naturally that I have a basic game. But I think even even though that, I consider myself having I don't think I have a basic game. I have a simple jiu-jitsu to understand, but at the same time, it's very complex. It's you don't see it. If it was that simple, everyone would be doing. Now all my students do have exact same game as me. It would be very easy to learn. But like every move, for you to be able to apply that move, it's hard. It's all the moves that I have that I use them really well in my game. It took me years to develop that game. Any one of my moves, it took me years and years of training. I can explain to you in details every single move I do. You choose a move, I explain in details. I sit down with you for 3 hours. There's no secret. It's you will learn everything I do, but you will learn the theory. But now to put that into practice, it takes years. It does not take a few times to do it, depending on the move. Of course, some moves you can learn fast. It's, you can implement on a game quickly, but, some of the details, it takes years. It took me years to be able to choke someone efficiently from the mount. It's a move that you learn on your first day. I teach my students the first week. They join my school. They will learn the cross-collar choke in the first week of training. But I could only develop that choke after years, after being a black belt, not before. If it's so easy, why couldn't I apply it before? Why don't you see it happening very often? It's very hard. And it's not easy to understand, to see it, but it's very hard to apply. It takes 10 details. If you get one wrong, it will not work. Some simple movement, it takes 10 little details that it's, at the same time, the hand cannot be here, it has to be slightly deeper. A few inches different, it will not work. If you're applying the move, if your body is here, it will not work. Like everything needs to fix into place for that move to work. So it's easy to understand, but it's not easy to apply it. It's hard. I mean, I teach, I teach my students everything. When I do seminars, I don't hide, because I don't think I don't try to hide anything. It's not one move that's going to make someone. It's years and years of training, so someone you can think, some people, they're like, I don't want to teach because I don't want to make the other one good. He's not going to make the other one good. He's the one who's going to make himself good, regardless of how you teach. He can be good in one move, but it doesn't mean that he'll be a great fighter because he knows one good move, We'll help him, but it's not going to make him the greatest fighter because I show him the best sweep I do. It's everything. All my attacks, it took me years to develop them, years and years. So they're not simple. They're very complicated. It takes a long time to learn. People think
basically it looks simple, but it's everything. But no, it's like it looks simple, but it's everything. But it looks simple, but it's complicated in its depths, basically. So when you're transferring all of that knowledge, let's not say that it's a seminar. Let's say it's towards your own students, towards somebody who you can see, basically on pretty much of a consistent basis, and seeing how much progress they're making. That gap that you've been speaking about in terms of, just knowing something, basically like having the theoretical knowledge behind it, like a conceptual framework, and towards transferring it into real life situations. What do you think makes some of your students better at transferring those conceptual things into real life? What do you think makes those students learn faster?
I think in real life, just with time, it takes time for you to transform that into real life, for you to understand that you even using that in your real life, because it's not something that I don't think it's something that you consciously do. Suddenly you see yourself a trouble. Okay, let me use my jiu-jitsu mentality into this. It's not something that you can even think of applying. It's when you think you're already doing it, and it's like people, I always heard jiu-jitsu is like chess. But I was even repeating that, when I was younger, but I could never actually see how can jiu-jitsu be like chess. Okay, it's strategy, you make, so the position you are, there's some movements you can do. But I mean, things happen so fast, they're changing so quick. How come it's like chess? It's okay, the idea of chess, but in a much faster way. I could never, I knew people used to say that, but I could never actually in my mind clearly see it is like chess. I only saw that after I was, in my mid-30s, after 30 years old, like, training jiu-jitsu my whole life. Suddenly, you start, suddenly clicks, whichever way you're fighting. Things happen fast, of course. It happened much faster than chess. But it is the exact like chess, but just faster. From the position you are, you have those moves you can do. Sometimes to make a move is a mistake. So, you have, this is the better path. This path will lead you this way. That path will lead you that way. It is that way. Every move you make, there's a action reaction. And putting that together, I mean, it takes many years for you to do that, And I could only see because I play chess, only after I was getting more into chess.
Yeah.
Then I would say, oh, it does look like chess.
So it's basically like you have to be in both things in terms of like, seeing, you can't just take jiu-jitsu in this example and seeing it being applied to all of your areas in your life, because as in your example, for example, you have to be committed both in jiu-jitsu and in the other area of your life to notice the similarities and perhaps the differences even.
And I think people to realize that, they realize only after they've been using, whichever lessons they learn in jiu-jitsu in the real life. After it's suddenly you see you're a more calm person under pressure. I think that's how suddenly is like, you can feel that you can take a better decision, not feel intimidated by people, or it's whatever situation you see yourself. I've been attacked at the academy, I mean, on the good sense, I've been put in any bad position you can find, you can think of it. I've been there. And suddenly there is nothing people that can do is going to be worse than what what I had in training. It's the nervous of competing and dealing with, getting ready to a fight, or suddenly you sparring against somebody much bigger than you. The guy, he's a high level and he's bigger and he's coming in to rip my head off. How do you do that? So it's lessons that you do learn how to. Suddenly you're outside, you're walking in the street, someone comes charging at you looking like a mad dog. It's you being there. You're not going to panic.
Hopefully you aren't pulling guard.
Don't pull guard. Don't pull guard.
No pulling guard, no stress. Yeah.
No pull guard. But it's that's how suddenly, after it's like, I were able to keep a cool head because that happened to me before. And it's like, suddenly you're proud of yourself, something that was, and then suddenly, that's how I think people see it, not before, only after.
Yeah, so it takes time. Basically, your basic premise, as far as I've understood, is like to become really good in jiu-jitsu and to appreciate it fully, just go with it and realize that it will take time until you understand the important things, at least.
Yes.
What like before we end, because we're slowly approaching that time mark, all of the time is, a part of you, but it's still behind you. What is time bringing next for Roger Gracie? What are your future plans?
My future is to, now committed to my school, my association, my students, and myself, my family. I think it's before which I had to fully dedicated all my time mainly to, my self-training, that was it was my sole purpose. It's if there's a priorities for me to be in shape, to be able to compete. And I think now I can actually, plan things ahead. I can do things because I could never, especially planning things ahead, because I never know when I'm going to compete or when I'm going to fight. And if I'm getting ready for those events, that's the only thing I can do to be ready. I cannot be doing anything else. I think now I can actually plan things further ahead, and now I can fully dedicate it to open more schools, and my association is growing, my students, and take time to myself and my family.
Are you satisfied with the way that the spread of your school is going?
I'm I have my school for many years. It's been growing. I have a great students. It's how jiu-jitsu community is close. End up being friends with your students. The academy is growing massively. I have a huge school now, and I plan to open more. The association is growing, and if I can help my students being a better person, or competing whichever way they want to achieve, I'm a happy person.
Yeah, man, we're crossing fingers for you, and for both for your happiness and for the happiness of your students, and of course for the spread of your business and of the schools themselves. Before we end, do you have anything more to add?
It's a pleasure being here. Thank everyone watching at home. Let's hope this whole craziness will end soon, and we'll be able to be back in the mats fully. Watching some competitions.
Yeah, and to actually sort of mitigate that that part of where they're saying that you'll be back on the mats, but you'll have to practice social distancing measures, which is like, how about no?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Thank you, Roger. It's been a real pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you.